Okay, let's just jump right in. We're looking at a pretty radical claim today, one that comes from the work of some really interesting doctors. They're suggesting that a whole bunch of our modern chronic illnesses, things like heart disease and diabetes, might not actually be separate problems at all. What if they're all just symptoms of a single, massive, and almost completely overlooked nutritional deficiency? Does that sound at all familiar? That feeling of just being constantly worn out, the aches, the sense that something is just not right. This quote, I think it perfectly captures a feeling that so many people have. It's that deep, nagging exhaustion that really sets the stage for the huge question these authors are asking. And right here, this is the central mystery we're diving into. The sources we're looking at argue that maybe we're just playing whack-a-mole, chasing individual symptoms with all kinds of drugs and treatments while completely missing a fundamental piece of the health puzzle. They're proposing a unifying theory, and it all boils down to one essential mineral. So let's unpack the real scale of this problem as they see it. What exactly is this hidden crisis that they're talking about? Well, their main idea is incredibly direct. One author literally states, the solution to heart disease has been with us all along, and it is nutritional. Most modern heart disease is caused by magnesium deficiency. So they're not saying it's just some small contributing factor. No, they're arguing it is a primary cause. Now, to really get how we got here, we have to kind of look back in time. According to the research, our ancestors, even our great-grandparents just a century ago, were taking in around 500 milligrams of magnesium every single day. For thousands of years, that was the baseline for human health. And now, look at this contrast. It's pretty shocking. Our intake has absolutely plummeted. Today, the average person is getting somewhere between 175 and 225 milligrams a day. Think about that. We're getting less than half of what our bodies are evolutionarily designed to run on. So the big question is, why? What happened? And this brings us right to our next point. The sources we're looking at point their fingers at two major culprits that have just systematically stripped this vital mineral right out of our modern lives. So the problem actually starts before the food ever even gets to our plates. The authors argue that modern farming practices have left our soil severely depleted of essential minerals, including magnesium. We might be eating a lot of food, but the food itself is just less nutritious. And this quote just brilliantly makes the point. And get this, it's not from a blog post last week. This is from a U.S. Senate document from 1936. This problem has been on the radar for nearly a century, and the sources argue that if anything, it's only gotten worse. And as if the depleted soil wasn't enough, then we have modern food processing. You take wheat, you refine it into white flour, and boom, most of the magnesium is gone. Same thing happens when you process sugar. Refined oils like canola and corn, zero magnesium. And here's the real kicker. Your body actually has to use up its own magnesium stores just to process sugar. So eating sugar creates a net loss of magnesium. It's a double whammy. Okay, so if this deficiency is so widespread and has such a huge impact, why isn't it the very first thing your doctor checks for? Well, the authors identify a few key reasons why they believe this mineral continues to fly under the radar of the medical establishment. First off, the main diagnostic tool is actually pretty flawed. The most common test for magnesium is a serum blood test. The problem is that only measures the tiny amount of magnesium that's circulating in your bloodstream, which is only about 1% of your body's total supply. And here's why that's so tricky. Your body works incredibly hard to keep that 1% in the blood stable at all costs. It'll actually pull magnesium out of your bones, your muscles, and your cells to keep that blood level looking normal. So a person can be severely deficient where it counts in their tissues, but their blood tests can come back looking perfectly fine. The sources also talk about a kind of cultural hurdle in medicine. They describe this thing called not invented here syndrome, where, even if groundbreaking research is done in other countries, it might get dismissed by doctors in the US simply because it wasn't done here. It creates this kind of institutional blind spot. And finally, the authors make a really critical point about, well, money. Magnesium is a natural, common nutrient. You can't patent it, so there's no massive advertising budget promoting it on TV, not like there is for prescription drugs. The argument is that the financial incentives to study and promote it, they just aren't there. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the problem. It sounds a bit bleak, I know. But now let's shift gears and talk about the solution, about the vital role this mineral is supposed to be playing in our bodies. I absolutely love this phrase from the book, The Magnesium Factor. They call it the silent guardian. And that's because when you have enough of it, you don't even know it's there. It's just quietly working behind the scenes at a cellular level, making sure everything is running smoothly, especially your heart and arteries. But when that guardian is missing, well, the list of conditions the authors link to its absence is just staggering. It's basically a who's who of the most common ailments plaguing our society today, from anxiety and panic attacks to heart disease, muscle cramps, high blood pressure, even chronic fatigue. It seems to touch almost every system in the body. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? The authors don't just point out a problem, they offer a really clear understanding of what we can do about it. So let's just zero in on heart disease for a second, because it's such a central theme. According to the research, magnesium protects the heart in 3 critical ways. It acts as a natural muscle relaxant, so it prevents those dangerous spasms in your heart and your blood vessels that can lead to heart attacks or high blood pressure. And it also plays a huge role in preventing calcium from building up in your arteries, which is what makes them hard and clogged. Now, this is a really empowering idea. The authors basically suggest that instead of just waiting around for massive billion-dollar studies, people can become their own health detectives. They're saying you can use more accurate tests, like a magnesium RBC test, track your own symptoms, and see the effects for yourself. And that really leaves us with this one big question. When you look at all the evidence that these sources present, the historic drop in our magnesium intake, the depleted food supply, and this huge list of chronic diseases all potentially linked back to this one mineral, you really have to wonder, are we overlooking one of the simplest, most fundamental keys to our health?